Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Padawan Unlimited podcast for a very special episode. I think this is actually episode, if not episode 50, 49. I actually forget, but
49.
We're 49.
49.
Leading up to our 50th episode and also 1 year of continuous, like each week, nonstop podcasting. We haven't taken a break. I haven't taken a break in 49 weeks. So, but today we have a very special guest, Jonah, who is and I've touched this in the previous video if you've seen the YouTube channel, the judge of all judges, the headest of all judges. We're not gonna do our typical breakdown of segments which is collection, meta, and then special topic. Today is all special topic. Yeah. So Jonah, welcome to the podcast again. So excited to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's great to chat with all y'all. I'm really excited for this.
Yeah,
we are too. Yeah, this is
awesome.
Seriously.
So I know the guys have been chomping at the bit, like to talk to you. Like seriously, there's during the interview I had with you in Milan that at the event, they were like, "Kill, you didn't ask this or you didn't ask that. Like, what happened?" So we'll get into that. But I guess for me, so this podcast is really tries to orient towards growing the community, not necessarily new players. Yeah. Like some people could be new to TCGs, not new to TCGs, whatever, or just new to Star Wars in general. So we'd like to keep it basic first, and then before we get into technical conversation, right?
Sure.
So for me, the question that I want to ask is, and maybe this might be important to people, why does the judge program matter? Right.
Ooh,
so that's
a fun one.
So why do we
with the big guns?
Yeah.
What is the judge program? What
is the judge? Yeah. But why does it matter? And I ask this because, right, some people think they know the rules, right? Like, why do we need tiers? Yeah. Like, there's levels and stuff, right? There's all this there's all this technical stuff. So much. But like, why does it matter? And when we understand what's in it for me, then people are like, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. So if you could go like real briefly, like, why should we care?
Before we get too far in, what's the time cap on this?
Okay, so typically we were 30 minutes, and then
no,
out the window. We started creeping up to 45 a couple weeks ago, and now we're pretty much at an hour. But so this is a very special episode. So if we go for an hour and a half, 2 hours, like we're doing it. You know what I'm saying? So it's okay.
So the reason I ask, every month or so, I have a broadcast with Tim, the founder of Cascade Games, my boss. We're a 2-person team here running the judge program. And we nominally schedule those for an hour. I think our record is 2.5. My community, the judges know that we don't do hour-long broadcasts. Even if I'm like, today's going to be a short one, they're like, great, we're going to do an hour 15, hour and a half. And I'm like, no, I promise it'll be short. And then an hour and a half later, I'm like, all right, thanks for the time. But good to know that like hour-ish is fine. I'll try to keep things brief, but I go on tangents a lot. But the question, what is a judge? What is the judge program? Why does it matter? Judges are friends, not food. We are people who care about the game, that want to make sure that players have a fun and fair experience. Really, the emphasis is on the fun. I think that the fair is a part of that fun because people have less fun when the game is not fair. And judges are folks who have either just a whole lot of passion or passion, training, and knowledge to make sure that your experience as a player is better. I've been judging for over a decade at this point as my livelihood. Don't know how I did that. I don't recommend it to anybody. It is not a secure way to live. But we go in and we make sure that you get your pairings in a timely manner. If you don't know what you're doing in an event, we can be like, hey, you sit here and you play the person who's seated across from you. Our job is to make it so that when you walk into a game store or you walk into sector qualifiers, planetary qualifiers, regional qualifiers, galactic championship, you have a good time through helping fix things if things go off the rail, or just helping create the environment that is healthy for you as players, as store owners, as tournament operators, all that.
Okay. Wow. That's great. Thank you so much for that kind of primer to the rest of the
Yeah.
conversation, right?
Yeah.
I love it, making, because it's not fun when it's not fair. So that's really good.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna do, I guess, how we'll organize this in questioning is, or like in conversation, I guess, is since the format is always like me, then Corey, then Rob. Let's stick with that, and then we'll go from there for the next
Great.
hour and a half. Thanks, Corey. What's
Awesome.
up? What have you been desperately wanting to ask Jonah on behalf of the community out there?
Sure. Well, like I said, we don't want to go too technical. I'm more on. I want to get some of your experience, what you've experienced as a judge, and what some of your favorite events judging have been, and some highlights from them, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's going to sound a little trite, but every event is special in its own way. I have at this point been, I've judged 2 planetary qualifiers. I've judged at 3 of the sector qualifiers. I'm going to be at regionals this weekend in Minneapolis.
Get to say hi to Gil again.
Yeah, depends on when this broadcast comes out. If you see me there, I'm more than happy to chat if you're a listener.
Awesome.
And then I've also done, a handful of Star City Games 1Ks and 2Ks as judge. And a lot of the ones that we've done like Atlanta, Charlotte, Tampa, all in the southeast of the U.S. I've also been at ones a little bit farther north. I think Richmond. There was Vegas. I've done a variety, but the ones in the southeast, a lot of them had many players from that general area, and so I've gotten to interact with these players month over month. And my favorite for any event is always the top 8, because at that point, players have won. They're like, I did it. I've done the hard part. I am here to relax. And there's a lot less pressure on the players. And so you get that atmosphere of just a bunch of dorks having fun with their card game that you get at like the local level. But even more so because everybody is buoyed by the prizes that they've already guaranteed themselves by placing in the top 8.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorites was at a planetary qualifier top 8. A father and son both qualified, and they were paired in the quarterfinals.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
And the dad was like, you are too young to go to Vegas on your own. And if I don't qualify, I'm not going to go to Vegas.
Oh, no.
Collusion, father. It's like, I was kidding. I'm kidding.
He hasn't asked for a concession. He hasn't done anything wrong. There's an implication there, sure.
Right.
And then his son just wiped the floor with him, like a very clean 2-0.
Oh, my God.
And like,
that's amazing.
He was just like, yeah, I'll get qualified, and then you qualifying is your own problem, Dad. And like, that was
that's
just
awesome.
that energy, and like everybody was rooting for both of them because it's just a fun storyline.
Yeah, that's cool.
And a fun experience.
That's what's great about this community is like
you
have families and people doing it together. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That same top 8, I think, was one of the first top 8s where somebody was playing Security Complex in a top 8. And it was 110, 112 players. And so, like, pretty good to get there with Krennic Security Complex.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my
Krennic Security Complex. Okay.
Yeah, it was hot. Like, that was just...
Yeah. Security Complex is the rare base that gives a shield, right? So
yeah, 25 health.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So Corey, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I can just keep on talking, but I don't need to. I don't need to keep on talking.
Rob, what do you got for us? That's a fascinating story.
Yeah, so that kind of hit on one of the questions I was going to ask. So I'm going to pivot here a little bit. So, because we're kind of talking about events in general, like, what are you most looking forward to at Galactics?
Oh boy,
loaded question.
Loaded question, I know. Come on, we got to come that inspiring.
I don't know what I'm able to talk about, so I've been talking with the folks who are working on Galactics, both the FFG organized play team and ACES, which has been doing the staffing for it for a while now. And I know that they really want to make this a very special experience for everybody who attends, even if you like O3 drop the main immediately, there will still be a lot of exciting stuff. I think I'm most excited to see. I love a good show, and like if I wasn't at Galactics, I'd be at home watching the coverage, and so I'm most excited to see how the coverage shows up
Okay.
for everybody else, and that's also going to be the most stressful part for me because that's the part that everybody on the internet gets to see, and as a judge, having something go uh, suboptimally on coverage is always a little bit stressful and a little bit worrisome. But the folks who are running the broadcast there are true professionals, and so I have no worries there.
Are we doing anything special judge wise for Galactics? And here's what I mean. So like
Yeah.
I recently became a judge apprentice. I was like, all right, I got to prepare for this conversation,
Yeah.
right? So there's, and like I mentioned earlier, there's levels and tiers, right? That I don't know if we'll have the full like roster, I'll say, of like talent at technical talent. I mean, like, because the documentation says you need to be a certain level of judge to judge certain level events. And so if that doesn't happen, which it's fair, it's the first year, it is what it is.
It won't be there.
Yeah, it won't be there.
I can tell you that. I wrote that documentation, and also I'm the one making the levels, and it won't be there.
It won't be. So are there like, and so what I mean is like, are you having special training programs for Galactic judges? Are you gonna have like meetups leading up to it to do special judge things? I don't know.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
like the
sure.
inquisitorial like group. I have
You're
no
the,
idea
you're
what's
the
going
Grand
on.
Inquisitor?
Yeah, you're the Grand Inquisitor here. So like, what kind of secret sauce is happening? If you could talk about it.
So we have two things going on, neither of which are secret. One, ACE is the organization that is doing the staffing, handling the staffing for this event for judges, is going to have staff training on Thursday afternoon. Everybody who's on staff is going to be in a room, and we're going to just go through some training. A lot of it is going to be focused on just getting comfortable in the space, getting to know each other, some team building exercises, a little bit of review of some areas. There might be like some mock tournament sort of stuff going on, or like judge calls live where we're like, hey, let's create a scenario, have somebody answer, and then we critique how they handle the call. That sort of thing is something I love.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Because
that's really interesting.
you don't get getting that live experience, but in a safe space where if you're wrong, don't worry, there are 40 judges watching you, and they'll tell you that you're wrong, but without damaging a player's game. And so you have the opportunity to be like, hey, this is a relatively straightforward, say, card manipulation error. You drew 3 cards when you were supposed to draw 2. This is nothing to worry about. Here's how we're going to fix it. Or stuff that's a little bit more complicated, because it's really important to get like those rote calls just locked in. If you're looking to become a judge, that's what I recommend practicing. Just getting those. The corner cases don't matter. They come up 1 in 1,000 calls, 1 in 10,000 calls, and you're not going to be able to prepare for it anyways, because it's just this random mishmash of circumstance. But hey, judge, I drew an extra card, or hey, judge, I didn't exhaust the appropriate number of resources, or hey, judge, I attacked a base when there was a sentinel in play. Being able to answer that immediately and quickly is hugely valuable. And so the on-site training is going to focus on that a little bit, but we don't need a ton. And I'll talk about the philosophy of judging in a second. Outside of the staff training, there is going to be a judge meetup that is open to the public. Anybody who wants to show up can show up, and anybody who is certified, whether as an apprentice or level 1 judge, will get some promos just for showing up. I'll just get
So Gil's coming.
So yeah, I'm going. Corey, but you're a collector, right? Are you also judged? Are you going to be showing up to these?
I might have to start taking some classes there.
There's a little bit of an incentive.
A quick question too, based on, because you're saying like, how early are these judges like selected for the Galactics and like or for regionals or whatnot?
I believe staffing for Galactics has just finished up. The second wave of acceptances went out, I think, over the weekend. And this is relatively early for staffing. This is where I want, in my experience, in my ideal world, judges find out whether or not they've been accepted to event 6 weeks in advance of the event. For sectors and regionals, the timeline was a bit tighter because those were announced. The exact dates were announced, I think, in mid-February, I think. And the first events were early March, and so it was like 6 weeks from when they were announced to the actual first event,
Yeah.
maybe even less. And so like applications were up for like a week, and then the organizers, primarily OPE out based in England, had like a week to make decisions, and then they were able to get acceptances out to judges like a month in advance, and that's real tight. Because I
Yeah.
want to, if I'm the head judge, if I'm helping run the event, I want the judges to have 2 weeks with their schedule of specific assignment at the event. And if I only have like a couple of weeks, if I only have 2 weeks to like between getting accepted in the event, it gets real tight. But yeah, usually about 6 weeks is nice. Longer is better, just because it gives people more time to make plans for travel or hotel, depending.
Makes sense.
But yeah, there's a lot going on. I'm not too worried about training for Galactics, because as you were saying, in the future, according to the plan that I have laid out, being a floor judge at Galactics will require being a level 3 judge. Right now, the Judge Apprentice certification exists and level 1 exists. You'll note that level 1 is not 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. And while that means that the people who are working Galactics don't hold the technical certification that we say is necessary, that doesn't mean that the folks there are unqualified. The certifications just indicate a floor. It says you are definitely able to do this. We don't know what beyond this you might be able to do, because everybody has different capabilities. But you're definitely able to do this. And we've been rolling out the program slowly so that the program and the members of the program can grow alongside the levels. If we had a 5-level system day one, last August when we launched, we still wouldn't have any level 5s, because some of the prerequisites are going to be judge so many events at such a level of complexity, or be a judge for 6 months or a year at this level and just have that experience. And that just hasn't happened yet. And part of what you were asking earlier is like, what is a judge? What are these levels? We want to tie the judge levels to player experience, to organized play. Level 1 judges, when you're certified as a level judge, what we're saying is you can run an event at your local game store level at casual tier, just weekly play, pre-release, store showdown, that sort of thing. Level 2 is going to be you can run a competitive event up to about 32, 40 players, like on your own, a competitive tier event. Level 3 is you can head judge a competitive tier event with other judges under your authority. And so that's generally going to be your planetary qualifier head judge tier. And rolling that out too fast, I think, is very dangerous, because what happens then is folks who have experience from other judge programs nab all the spots, and then they kind of get locked in. And something that I desperately want to avoid, coming from a very established program, is any sort of like people who have experience are obviously going to have a leg up through that experience. But I don't want to say, great, you're all people who already have certifications in other judge programs. You judge Pokemon, you judge Magic, you judge Flesh and Blood, you judge Yu-Gi-Oh! That's our head judge team. Nobody else can get in. I want to make sure that the community is able to grow, and natives, folks who are playing their first TCG, are able to get into the judge program and find success.
I love that. You know, Rob, that's fantastic. It's like Rob actually runs a board game community of like 50 people that meets up like every Monday at like a Wegmans. So like yeah, so the fact that
Corey's one of my co-organizers.
Corey's one of the co-organizers. So hearing that, where you're like, you want to grow the community, you want to make it fair, you don't want this like insular judge program, right?
Yep.
That's fantastic to hear. I mean, does that kind of like reflect, like, as you kind of organize things, does that reflect how you do it too?
Oh yeah, for sure. You know, like my whole goal with the community, like with the board game community in general, and I also happen to run our SWU events at our local thing, our local store. But it's all about like welcoming people into the hobby, right? It's all about getting people to, you know, they're everybody starts somewhere, right? Like that's the thing I say a lot is, you know, in board games, I started playing Settlers of Catan in like the early 2000s, but I wouldn't be playing, you know, Vital Lacerda games now if I hadn't started playing Catan 20 years ago. And if someone had told me like, oh, you haven't played this like advanced enough game yet, we're not even going to bother with you. Like I never would have started doing that stuff. And so really kind of getting to the point where you can welcome as many people as possible, I think is really, really important. We try to do that with our SWU community too. I've recently gotten like 2 or 3 new players who like, I think probably first TCG, like not like super competitive players, which is fine. Like, you know, we all have like kind of that tier that we fall into that we want to play at. But everybody has to start somewhere. So, you know, if we kick you out at the door because you've never played a TCG before, you're not going to play this with us, and then the game's going to die, and we're not going to have people to play with.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And so as a recipient of this judge program that is open, I was like, oh, this process is actually really smooth and easy to get into. So I do appreciate the work that you have put into it, because I was like, how do I do this? I have like a post about this, like entering the judge program. I actually failed the test the first time. I thought I was like, oh, I know the rules. I'm gonna do this. And then I went in, I bombed. And some people like, people around me were like, oh, I passed the test so easy. I was like, what is going on? But it, you know, it does what I guess essentially what I'm saying is that it is easy to start the program. Mm-hmm. You know, it's as easy as logging into was it Cascade Games or the Nexus like site, which
Nexus.cascadegames.com.
I will post the link in the description of this podcast, so that people who are interested, haven't heard of the judge program, can join. There's already, I think, like 4,000 people. Or roughly?
There are about 4,000 people who have registered accounts. About 10% of those, just over 400 last I checked, are level 1 judges.
Okay.
And I think we're at like 1,950 apprentices. So close to like 2,500 of those 4,000 are certified judges in one way or another.
That's awesome, because the community is relatively small in this still, like before it hasn't hit the mass market. So that's actually, I think, a pretty sizable percentage of actual the SWU population, Star Wars Unlimited population, right?
Yeah, probably.
So
and giving out promos at meetups probably doesn't hurt our numbers, but
hey, that's what I'm saying. That's cool. Like no one knows about that. I'm glad you you mentioned that, because now, you know, if people do, you know, are collectors, there's a different type of approach to learning about the game, appreciating it, and then helping build your own local community because you're educated in it, right? So it kind of it's good for the meta, it's good for the community, it's good for collection, right? I think that's a great. I didn't really know that until like just now. So that's a great like thing to hear.
Yeah. So I actually got one, because this one will tie into what we were just talking about. So you were mentioning like doing like mock calls, basically mock judge calls. What is like the one card or one leader you hate to see when they call you over?
Hate to see?
Well, not hate to see, but like what gives you the most trouble? Like they, you know, you get this call and you're like, oh, not that call again.
Yeah, and tell me why it's Han. No,
sorry. I mean, there's really, it's Lurking TIE Phantom. It's just like, hey, can I use this to kill Lurking TIE Phantom? The answer's no. The answer's
always no.
Like really simple questions. They're like, can I do this? No, you can't. That and Crate Dragon. Can I do this to get around Crate Dragon's ability? Like, if I use Force Lightning on it, will it lose the ability and therefore not damage me? Nope, it'll still hit you. Can I? Fun. Yeah, no matter how much you pay into it, because that's not part of the cost. But Crate Dragon and Lurking TIE Phantom are probably the cards that I get the most questions about. Just, I really don't want my opponent's card to be good. Can it be bad?
Can it really be? Is it really this good? Yeah.
And the answer every single time is yes, it is this good. Yeah, you still have to throw something at it. You still have to like run a unit into the Lurking TIE Phantom.
Have you noticed that with Chewies coming up now?
I think we've gotten fewer questions on Chewies because people are starting to get used to it, but also we don't have like weird shenanigans with bounties in the same set. Like, can I use Val to kill my opponent's Lurking TIE Phantom, even though like it's their Val? And it's like, no, you control the bounty, so it still doesn't kill it. But yeah, there's definitely some number of Chewy questions. We were also getting for a while Commandeer and Sneak Attack questions of how do the lasting effect expiring and the delayed effect triggering resolve during the end of phase. That's one that like judges were just like, oh, I see these two cards. I know the answer to the question that you have not yet asked.
You can anticipate what's coming up when you see the cards on the table.
Do you, as like the program director for the judge program, do you get early access to the cards for the next set? Like, get to see them so that you can like prepare like documentation?
No.
I don't know,
like weird interactions,
like weird, because especially for like something like Galactics, right, or any something like that,
Right.
like.
Well, because we're gonna have Legends come out.
We sure are.
Yeah.
So, and although they have spoilers already out, like even before that, do you get the time? Here's what I mean, because I also assume that like any changes to documentation has to go through like Disney or something, because like
Sure does.
it does. Okay, because like they own the IP, so like even if it's unrelated to like the like actual IP directly, you have to go through this huge process of change. Like, can you talk about that a little bit? Is that you're allowed to? Okay, cool.
Nobody's told me I'm not allowed to, so I'm allowed to. I give myself permission. Please don't come after me, Disney. So there are a couple of moving parts here. We're working on developing a pipeline whereby I get card sets when they are finalized so that I can go through and be like, hey, this card is going to just create a bunch of questions, or I have a bunch of questions about this card. Please tell me how this works. For example, I can't remember the name of the card that was spoiled today. The one that doubles raid.
Martian Row.
Yeah.
Six drop. Yeah.
When does that doubling happen? So we're going to go into nitty gritty real fast.
Awesome.
Let's do it. I'm excited.
Is it in order of timestamps? So if I have something that has raid 1, then double, and then I play something that gives it raid 2, I go 1 double to 2 plus 2 equals 4. Or does doubling happen at the end of the process? 1 plus 2 to 3, double to 6. You don't know the answer. I know that you don't know the answer because I don't know the answer.
Okay.
And
I feel like it should just be the better thing that you want, right?
I mean, it might be the player chooses the order in which abilities are applied, or it could be add, subtract, multiply, divide, because something might have. There's what is it?
Are we playing PEMDAS?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. Like there's the card from Jump to Lightspeed that halves resource costs, and that's multiplier. Yeah, Starhawk. Now that's the only thing that applies in that step right now in playing cards. So we don't need to know the order. And with Raid, we probably don't need to know the order unless people start running that with like Red 3 and other cards that grant Raid with cards that already have Raid. But these questions exist. And so there are a couple of things that play here. One, as you mentioned, everything that touches Star Wars needs to go through approvals processes. And so the tournament regulations and the comprehensive rules, because they mention Star Wars things directly, have to go through the whole approvals process. The master event document, which is generic and doesn't say the names of any specific cards or mechanics, it's just like, if a player draws an extra card while playing a TCG, that one doesn't have to go through the whole process, but I do really think it'd benefit by having specific examples, so I'm going to push for it to take an extra month to get anything through. But I have a great relationship. We at Cascade Games have a great relationship with FFG. I'm in regular communication with both the organized play team and the design team. For Jump to Lightspeed, I got the comprehensive rules update that they were submitting for approvals about 2 months before the set release. We're working on developing a pipeline so that we are able to get access to the card files early. That's risky business because they obviously want to avoid leaks, and they trust us. They want to make sure that the entire card file doesn't just show up online someday. And so they are protective of that. They're protective of all of these updates because something that they also want to avoid is I get an update, I start talking about it intentionally and with permission, and then they're like, actually, we're going to end up changing that because that hasn't, this is what we wanted to do, and it didn't get through approvals for whatever reason. Or, we realized a card in the next set down the line makes this rule break, so we decide to get rid of it. But now I've already educated people on this bad rule, And so when the set comes out, people give bad rulings. And so they want to be very confident in what they hand to us for public dissemination because they don't want misinformation floating around.
Yeah. I mean, it's important for them to be able to control the narrative as far as what they want out there and what rules and things. So that way,
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. Has there been a rule or a edge case that you brought up that directly impacted a change because of what you've mentioned?
Oh yeah. So in the community, we have a pending clarifications channel where it's just like, hey, how does this work? Some of it is functional changes. Most of it is non-functional changes or clarifications. The one functional change we had was in tournament staple Blizzard Assault AT-AT. That
Tournament
card
staple, huh?
previously had a trigger that let it deal excess damage to a unit. And the question we had is, if it gains overwhelm from the leader Maul, what happens? Does it get to deal excess damage to base and to another unit? And because at the time it was printed as a trigger, the answer was the excess damage will be used immediately as damage is dealt. But then they issued errata to make it a replacement effect. And so now the player chooses, do you want to send it to the base or to another unit? And so that ended up being a functional change to a card because we were like, hey, how does this work? And they're like, we were hoping nobody would notice that because it doesn't work the way we want it to right now. And so we'll update it soon, TM.
That's so funny. They're like hoping that, I hope this card is too unplayable for anyone to notice. But it...
Yeah,
so
there are a lot of...
DJ?
DJ's another one. Like, we were like, how does resource management work? And they're like, this is how players are expected to handle and communicate their resources. And it's like, okay, well, this creates this situation that feels very unfun to players with DJ. And they're like, this is the better of the two options, because if you're not allowed to rearrange your resources, things get very hairy very fast. And it means that players, particularly those playing with smuggle cards, are very particular about what they're exhausting when. And that bogs down the game massively for every game. At the cost of the games where DJ exists are less fun. And they're like, this is a decision that we are going to stick with. This is one that we are aware of the consequences of our action.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get to, outside of the card files, outside of the rules and the policy documents updates. And when I say policy and rules, I'm talking about two separate things. Rules are the comprehensive rules, which say this is how cards work. Policy is tournament regulations and master event document, which say this is how tournaments and games work and with people. So like what happens if something goes wrong, that's covered by policy, whereas the rules handles how the cards function. Next week after regionals, I'm going to stay in Minneapolis for the week to stay in office with the FFG headquarters and just take a hammer to policy and like reshape it from the ground up. I have an actual week full of meetings planned.
That's really cool to hear.
It's very exciting.
Are you so like when you have to talk about these rules, like let's say there's pending rule calls that like you're not at the, like it's unclear to you, do you have like Tyler Parrott at like on your like speed dial? You're like, hey, or is there like a hotline? You know what I mean? Like how does that work behind this?
Phone?
Yeah, is there a bat phone?
So there was a question that came up at Milan sectors with Spark of Rebellion Luke leader, which puts shield counter on a heroic unit you played this turn.
Yep.
And jump to lightspeed Luke unit. If you play him as an upgrade, and then the vehicle he's on is defeated and he becomes a unit, can you put a shield counter on him? And we looked at this and we're like, this language could go either way. It could either be a unit that was played this turn, or a unit that was played this turn. I can't remember how we ruled it in the moment. We were just like, this is unclear in the rules. We need to make a decision. Myself and the other head judge consulted real fast and we're like, this is what feels correct to us just from our experience with this game, with other games, from what the rules say. This is our best guess as to intent. We're just going to rule this way for this weekend. And it was the same head judge team the next weekend in Liverpool. And so we told ourselves that we were going to be doing that. But I also reached out to the head judges in Denver and said, hey, this came up. We feel like there's not a clear answer in the rules. Here's how we ruled it so that we can remain consistent across these events. So if a player flies from Milan to Denver the next week rather than to Liverpool, they will get the same experience if they get this strange question. And we also submitted it to FFG being like, hey, we have this question. When you get the chance, answer it. And we were able to get an answer a while later. And the answer is, for those curious at home, it is the complete phrase. So it has to be a unit played this turn. So it has to have been played as a unit. So if you play it as an upgrade and eject it, you cannot put a shield counter on because it wasn't played as a unit this turn.
Got it. That's one of the questions Corey asked me the other day. Like, Gil, you didn't ask him what was the ruling. So thank you for coming on the podcast to redeem.
It was a great story, and I'm like still like, oh, this is really cool. Like, what happened? And then like we never heard. I was like, oh no, we gotta make sure we find out. So I'm glad you brought that up.
All full circle. This is what we're all about. Oh my god.
Now, the other question you asked is, do I get to see cards? And I talked about the pipeline for the cards. I do have other pipelines. One, I get to see judge promos. So I can't actually name any of the cards from Legends of the Force that I knew were coming in advance because we haven't revealed them as judge promos yet, and we're not prepared to. But I was like, we got to know some of these cards in advance, some of the very exciting cards. I think we now have, they've shown us cards from set 7 and 8 as well. And there's some very cool stuff coming.
That's awesome.
But that's just because like we need to be involved in that process of, because starting with the Legends of the Force promos that the Judge program is getting, we're going to be getting new art. And so they're going to have art that is unique to them, separate from the standard printing. And so we need to get involved and work on that art process and getting them into our card frame sooner rather than later.
Oh, that's fascinating.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But also I get to see cool cards, and it's very exciting.
It's interesting. I for some reason I thought, and I don't know why I thought this, I always thought that like you would actually have final say about like judge cards, but I guess actually you're like more of a recipient of information. And like like you have nothing to do with any of the printing, the production, the selling of it.
Have you been able to like request a card? Like, oh, can we get this as a promo?
So there's a little bit of requesting that we can happen, but the way it's worked so far is the design team looks at, so far all of our waves of promos have been tied to sets, and so they look at the set. They look at, like, for example, what cards are getting prestige variants or our promos elsewhere. Because it would suck for both us and, let's say, Planetary Qualifiers if we got the same card as a promo, because it just makes it a little bit less special if it's being reused, even if it has new art. And then they look for cards that are good and playable. Now, they're making the decisions for the set 3 and set 4 cards was made in October, which is before sets 3 and 4 were previewed or announced at all. And so they're guessing blind into the meta. And so far, they've either the cards they've picked have either been strong meta cards or just really cool cards that people want to play anyways. The legendary Maul unit out of Twilight of the Republic, not really tearing up the premier meta, but it's Darth Maul and he attacks 2 units, and that's just cool. Like, that is just a cool card. And so we don't have direct say. They're like, here are a bunch of cards, and we can say, we don't really love that card. That card doesn't feel exciting to us. Can we have a different card? Or we'll just skip on that and have a slightly smaller wave this time. We're also, something that we have on our wish list that hasn't been approved yet, is there are some cards from like set 1 or set 2 where we want to create a story or a theme of cards. Tim, again, my boss, founder of Cascade Games, and the other half of the Judge program, is a huge art guy. He has several pieces of original comic art in his house. He's on great terms with so many artists. He loves art. And he's friends with a lot of people who create art for TCGs just because he's been in the TCG business for close to 30 years now at this point, I think. And so our dream is to begin to work with some of bigger name artists. We've even looked at like artists for Marvel and Image Comics, just like extraordinarily talented people. And then one of my dreams is getting like a diorama scene of the 4 aspect cards, so Vigilance, Cunning, Command, and Aggression, that just lay out as one massive battle scene from an incredibly talented artist. Like, I don't believe we have a line on Alexei Briclo, who did the original Planeswalkers for Magic, but just a diorama of that would be absolutely gorgeous. And those cards are all generally
That's so
very
exciting
playable.
sounding. Yeah.
Um,
Special
and getting
guest
like
artists would be really cool to see.
Yeah.
That would be awesome, especially if they were like you said, judge promos or something like that, where it's specifically for these groups of people that are helping build this community and making it fun for everyone. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I would also like, this is pure pipe dream. If we could somehow get Disney to release some of Ralph McQuarrie's concept art
Oh my gosh.
for use as promos, right? Wouldn't that be sick? Now, is there a world where that happens? No, we don't have enough money to get that. But oh my god,
Hey,
it would
man,
be
like,
cool.
if we're here like 20 years from now, you never know. Like that
Like-
could be a thing. That would be amazing.
You know that classic painting of R2 and C3PO on Tatooine, that like very proto design? Just imagine that as like a promo for R2 and 3PO. Like,
don't tell me the good time, Jonah.
that's my job. I just make things sound exciting and then cannot follow through because I have no control over licensing at Disney.
The sound you hear in the background is me signing up for the judge program immediately.
That's what all the clicks are.
Oh god, I mentioned wanting to get Sana Takeda, the artist for the Monstrous comics. And absolutely stunning work. If you're not familiar with it, look it up. It is mind-blowing that she does full comics at that level. But Ryan Serrano, the rules admiral for Star Wars Unlimited, as soon as I mentioned that, was just like, here's my tattoo of her art. Please do this. I will do whatever we need to do to get that to happen. I'm like, so she's probably out of our budget because we don't have a huge budget for this. But I'll see what we can do.
If you're listening.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite judge promo card?
Do you have a favorite? Question.
Yeah,
I know they're like your children, right? You can't have a favorite, but which one?
Right
which
now,
really choose?
From this recent wave. So the first wave, we didn't have foiling. The second wave, we do have a foil treatment on them. The Ahsoka, the Maul, and the Ghost all came out absolutely gorgeous. They have a slightly different treatment than the standard foil. It's a little bit shinier. And so energy blasts, either lightsabers or like the turbo laser blasts coming from the Ghost, are so pretty. And the graphic designers have like broken the frame of the cards. And so like lightsabers are popping over it. The like frame on Ahsoka is like blue and tan matching her colors. And it's just like, I know that there are a lot of cards and a lot of promos in Star Wars Unlimited where the frame doesn't match the aspect of the card and it's very confusing. But also these cards are so pretty that like I don't care that they are the wrong color. Like I don't care that Ahsoka is this deep navy blue, even though she's a cunning card.
Yeah.
It's okay, Rob.
Well, I was gonna say that was one of the things that I noticed. Like the frame breaks on Ghost and Ahsoka looked really, really on point, and like I thought that was really cool about them. I imagine obviously I have not seen them in person, but I imagine they look even better in person, and they looked pretty good on the site.
They look so much better in person. Like it's not even funny. Like they look pretty good online. Like at this point, I'm like, yeah, they look fine online, and other people are like, this is incredible. I'm like, no, you have to see it in person. Just the way they pop is incredible.
Are these cards, you said they released, are they actually already available? Have people purchased them or like?
Yep.
Okay.
So the only cards that we haven't made available broadly are the Luke and Vader pilot promos. We have some plans to distribute those that we're not ready to announce. Another way that people can get, so we have meetups where certified judges get promos just for showing up and attending the meetup, asking questions and being involved. And that's, you get a 2024 convention exclusive Lucre Vader leader, so a hyper Lucre Vader. And then one of our Wave 1 promos, so that's Wrecker Tech, K2SO, Avenger, Shadows, Maul, and Snoke, so just one of those, non-foil. And then we've also had merch kits where people are able to get promos alongside other swag, whether it be deck boxes or, in the case of this most recent one, fun little exclusive play mats. I'm going to grab my friend here, but
Yes.
yeah,
Look at that strong
That's
jaw. That's a strong
know,
jaw.
that jaw is so
For
strong.
Darth Maul.
But yeah, we were able to get the Ahsoka and Maul play mats, and they're relatively exclusive. I think we had 500 of each made, stitched from Game Genic. And what we've been doing is we've released these merch kits. They're available to level 1 judges first in a lottery-esque system, so we can make sure that it is fair, so it's not like first come, first serve. We learned our lesson, we did it bad, and then
Oh yeah.
we were like, what if we did it better? They were also available for sale to apprentices through a drawing system. I think we have a couple left that'll be going back to the L1 so that they'll be able to get second copies and get more cards that way. But a lot of these cards are available to members of the judge program, and we're going to continue to have merch kits and distribute them through meetups. And we want to get these into people's hands and get them excited about the judge program and appreciate their participation in the program.
Yeah. I need to get on that new wave because
level 1.
I know, like,
Yeah.
if they're going back to level 1s for copies, I don't even have one yet. I need to step up my game. Okay.
So you said something about
No, go ahead.
things you've learned, you made mistakes, but in the past, like what is something that you've learned from prior events or situations that you've been able to carry over and make better?
Oh God, everything. There's just so I'm gonna just go in a different direction, go on a tangent. That's one of the things that's so great about judging. It has, I believe, made me a better human being. I'm better at identifying my mistakes, figuring out where I went wrong, how to improve on them. Years ago, when I was a Magic judge, I started one of my reviews by saying, "You shouldn't be a competitive level judge." I was walked down by one of my mentors from saying, "You shouldn't be a judge." They're like, "That's too harsh." And so I'm like, okay, I'll add the word competitive level, and that'll make it better. That was also still too harsh. That person still does not like me to this day because
Oh boy.
I was not respectful of them as a person. I was trying to be like direct and honest with my feedback and screwed that one up massively. But I've learned how to deliver critical feedback in a way that people can actually hear me. I've learned how to manage conflict. If I've learned how to talk with a player who I think is cheating or just lying to my face. But on a practical level, like a lot of what I've learned is how to communicate more effectively, how to communicate better. I know that we're never going to be able to please everyone. There's always going to be somebody who's upset and disappointed. For example, if we just took the foil promos and mailed one out to every member of our community, everybody who has an account on Nexus, there would be a lot of people who are upset at us because I already spent money got promos. Why does everybody else get a promo without having to buy one? Or I'm a certified judge, all they have is an account. Or like, no matter what we do, people will be upset, even if it's just here's a cool card for free.
Yeah.
I ran the duels at PAX East, and so I gave out like 5 or 6 promos to people, and people were like, "Hey, I didn't go to PAX East, and I am upset that I didn't get an opportunity to get this promo." And it's like, okay, I could do this fairly and give nobody promos. That's the only fair way to distribute promos.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rob.
I feel that though, Gil. I feel that so much. And Corey has seen this because whenever you're the face of something, no matter what you do, even with the best intentions, people will find that you did something wrong. And it's not, win, lose, or draw. Like, whether it was intentional, whether it was good natured, whether it was good spirited, like it's hard to please everyone. It really is.
So I will say to anyone listening in the Padawan Unlimited podcast, let's always assume positive intent, right?
Exactly.
And anything that, like, for the judge program specifically, because we're not going to talk about FFG, we're talking about Jonah and the program right now. But assume positive intent within like these calls when promos are made, and just be happy for those who had the opportunity to participate and get it at that time, because it could have been you. Like, for me, I appreciate that. I mean, I didn't have the opportunity as a pseudo collector like Corey. Well, he's more serious than me. As a pseudo collector, like, do I get sometimes upset when, like, there's not maybe necessarily a full print run? It is what it is. But at the end of the day, we had the opportunity to get it. Like, it was actually given to us. There's a process, and like, if you at these meetups, like, there's other ways to do it, and you're trying to be accommodating as possible. And the fact is, we should appreciate that as a community, that someone out there is trying to look out for us in a positive way. It might not always work out the way we want it, but it's not always about us. So
It doesn't always work out the way we want it to either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
Well, you also want to make it special, like you mentioned earlier. It's like these things, if you're just handing them out like candy, they just start to become like just paper. Like, oh, this is okay, cool. Like, you want it to be something special that requires more involvement or more attention, and not necessarily, oh, here, you create an account, like you said, just we'll send out 500 cards to every single person, or 5,000 cards to every single person. So
yeah, I mean, I do get this is a little bit weird, but I do get a kick out of people being like, "Oh, the judge program has done something terrible, but you, Jonah, you're doing great." And I'm like, I'm the person who made that decision that you don't like. I am like, Tim, my boss, does the business development. He talks to FFG, he's in charge of managing our contract, working with other publishers if we're looking to like expand into other programs. He's in charge of running the merch kit, but everything that is a judge program decision, like the certifications, the testing, all of that, that's entirely me. And people will be like, "This is Jonah, you're great, but whoever was in charge of this is an idiot." And I'm like, that was me, my friend.
I'm an idiot.
Now, fair, I am. Like, a lot of times I am wrong. Something that I need to get better at is admitting that publicly. I've realized sometimes somebody sends me a DM and I just get like kind of angry, and I'm like, I'm not going to answer this because I don't want to answer this because I'm angry. And what I've learned is 99% of the time it's because I'm wrong and they are pointing out one of my mistakes, and I don't like that. And so now I've got like every single time I'm like, I don't want to answer this person. I'm like, oh, it's because I'm wrong. Let's just fix it, accept it, and move on. And so just like that level of awareness has been relatively recent. And so for everybody who has made me a little bit angry, thank you. It's made me better at realizing my mistakes.
that is a refreshing perspective. I will say, we in previous episodes here at Padawan Unlimited, we've talked about some more serious topics. Like, sometimes we talked about like me being depressed about the game sometimes after like a bad performance, right? And like, how do you not quit, right? So
become a judge. I make the top 8 every weekend.
and you get cool cards.
And I'm generally positive EV.
So,
Yeah.
oh my god, do you guys get? So this is a question that I don't know if you're allowed to answer this. Maybe we won't talk numbers, but do you guys get paid? Like, not you, because you run the program, but I mean, like, judges. Yeah. What's the compensation package like? I know we can't necessarily talk. Well, I'm gonna guess we can't talk about like exact numbers, but like, what does a compensation package look like for someone who's spending 8 to 12 hours of their day, right? Potentially traveling, right? I always thought, honestly, it was like for love of the game, but like,
no. It's also not for the money. The money is not that good.
Okay. But
I'm positive EV generally. It varies a lot. Hi, this is my official statement as the program director. If you work for a for-profit entity, get paid. Now, get paid at a level that you feel is comfortable and worth the amount of time and effort you're putting in. Even if you are working weekly play, pre-release, etc., get compensated in some way. I can't speak to the exact legalities of every country, and I don't know the labor laws of the United States that well, much less the rest of the globe. If you're comfortable with that compensation and you think that it sets a reasonable precedent, you can accept that. That is a reasonable line. For my compensation, it varies depending on the tournament organizer that I'm working for, the event that I'm working, how long that event is. For planetary qualifiers, as the head judge, it was probably like 300 for the day. In one case, I got hotel because the tournament organizer is also a longtime friend of mine. I've worked with him before, and he's like, my boss is paying for my hotel room. I can also get you as long as you're willing to take the other bed in this room, hotel room's free. For other events, it's at my level. I can, and this is after a decade of doing this professionally, as head judge for these larger events, somewhere between 300 and 500 a day, if that's the cash compensation. Floor judges, usually 200 to 300 per day. Some folks pay hourly instead of a flat wage. Some tournament organizers pay a little bit less, but they'll give you hotel or give you a food stipend or travel stipend. A lot of other tournament organizers give you gifts, especially for official events where some amount of prize wall and support comes from FFG to give to players or to give out at the event. They're like, so at each of the sectors, I got a set of the prize wall promos, just one of each. And I was able to get Kylos and Obi-Wans as judge stamp promos for working those events.
Wow.
So I have, I think I got a playset at each of them. So I have 3 playsets of judge stamped Obi-Wans because I worked a lot of events. So now I need to find decks for them, or maybe make a very large Obi-Wan Kylo cube, and that's it. That's just 360 cards. It's either Obi-Wan or Kylo. That's the entire draft experience.
Oh my god!
Nice.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that insight. That is very, very helpful. Because again, I think I'm a newer judge. I don't know if I'm gonna ever get to like a level 3 or 4. I don't know if I have the brain power for that.
You do.
I appreciate it. But that's cool because people who want to get into it, right, and the other avenue, right, because again we're talking about not just playing, but there's this other pathway you can do to get involved with the game and still do so. Because I know some people who try to play the game to make money, right? They're playing because they're trying to get to the top 8 or trying to get to the top and like positive EV. I guess I'm assuming economic value that's what it stands for.
I think it's also estimated value because it's like, because it's used a lot of times, at least in my experience with TCGs, to like the value of a booster pack. What do you expect to get out of this pack? Like, if you hit the Hyperfoil Vader, you got that's the value of the box in. Anyway, it's
no. See, again, this is stuff I don't know. Star Wars is my first one. To me, there's no EV because I just want to buy the packs, and I open them in my car, hoping car luck is real, and it never is. So if we're talking,
for everyone else, for everyone else, it is though, not just you.
But anyway, so like that's fascinating because there is a way to make some type of a living judging. No. But not at all. Or at least sometimes. Hold on. Maybe let me phrase it then. Maybe there's at least some compensation. It's not for the level of the game. Like don't
compensation.
Don't think of like the way I thought of it, where you do it for free and like a promo card. You actually should get paid for your time.
Now at the local level, like margins are super tight for like local tournament organizers, and if you're doing like actually 5 minutes of work over the course of 3 hours, you should like getting paid for 3 hours of work when all you do is press pair round 3 times and say pairings are available and answer a 1 judge call. Like you shouldn't get paid for 3 hours of work unless you are actually working that whole time. If you're just like hanging out at the store and helping out a little bit, something like free entry or like free snacks while you're judging and playing in the event, like at the local level, that's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Because you're providing like $10 worth of labor over the course of 3 hours. Because you're like, if you're a store employee, get paid your proper wage because you're working the whole time. But if you're just like hanging out and answering a question, whatever. But if you're working for a planetary qualifier, something larger, working the entire day, absolutely get compensated. There are people who are able to eke out a living through judging. I was able to do it, but this was as a magic judge, and there was an event the size of regionals to 3 or 4 times the size of regionals every weekend in the United States.
Wow.
And so I could go from event to event to event to event. And I mean, going for a month without going home sure does burn you out real fast. But because of that density of events, I was able to do it. There simply aren't enough events if you are dedicated as just a Star Wars judge right now. Heck,
Yeah.
there aren't enough events if you're a dedicated Magic or Flesh and Blood judge right now. And those TCGs have many more events than Star Wars does at the moment. So don't quit your day job to judge. But it is a plus EV hobby.
Okay.
Have you noticed, like, with the judges and the teams that form, that they're consistent? Like, whereas like the judges are constantly judging together, making it a better experience, or is that something that you're trying to avoid, where you want more judges to interact with each other and do different events?
They're definitely. I judge now because of the people. Like, don't get me wrong, Star Wars Unlimited, great game, love it. But I am a judge because of the friends I met while judging. I'm sure you're familiar with the experience at a large tournament like Sectors or even a planetary qualifier where you sit, you play your match, you have a good time or a bad time, and then you have 5 minutes until the next round begins. So you look for your friend, you find them or text them, thumbs up, thumbs down. You see if you have like scraps of granola in the bottom of your backpack so you have something to eat, and then you go to your next round. As a judge, I say, you have 55 minutes, please begin. And then I go find my friends and say, hey, let's talk about rules and let's talk about this game. Let's go watch some Star Wars. And so while you get to hang out with your friend for like 5 minutes every round, I get to hang out with my friends the whole round every round, and we get to talk about the really interesting stuff. But yeah, there are a lot of people who have made friends here. Like the Star Wars Judge program has a lot of natural native talent. And people are developing reputations in the program as this is a person you go to for rules. This is somebody that you go to for policy. This person has experience with this sort of thing. If you have concerns about something in particular, this person has a lot of opinions. You can talk to them about it and get some insight. And that's all online. In person, people are starting to get to know each other as well. I know that like in Minneapolis and at Galactics, there are some judges who are planning like staff karaoke, because they're like, yeah, we're just going to hang out after the event and just continue to be nerds together. You definitely do get people who work together frequently and get to know each other really well and know like how this gets done with these people. And that's super valuable because you can just say, go handle X, or even just like, hey, that's a problem, go handle it. And you don't have to say anything, like you can just gesture like that.
Right.
And with the people that I've been working with for 10 years, they know what that is. They know how I want them to handle it. And they agree that that is the best way to handle it. And so they'll go handle it. And I don't need to ask any other questions. Whereas with somebody I haven't worked with before, I'd be like, hey, so end of round over there is starting to fall apart for these reasons. Can you go talk to these people, tell them these things, and make sure that these things start happening? And then I need to check back in with them just because we don't have those reps together. And so you do get a layer of comfort over time, which is great to see. And as we get more and more events, I think more and more people are going to get more comfortable working together. There's going to be best practices established because Star Wars is a different game than all these other TCGs. And so while we're pulling best practices from pretty much every TCG that exists, we're going to form our own that work best for Star Wars, and people are going to learn those and propagate those. So definitely there are groups forming, but we also want to spread those and like keep the doors open and have those groups grow.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you for that. So we're actually closing on an hour. We're
Yeah.
doing pretty well.
That was quick.
Maybe we'll do one more round of questions if that's okay. I really want to just closing stuff. Because it's gonna get later in the evening. And
I got plenty of time.
yeah, but I want to be conscious of that. So Rob, haven't heard from you in a while. Is there any
Yeah.
burning questions like that you got?
So I think this one's not specifically judge related, but since I'm the guy who ends up talking about meta a lot,
yeah.
what's your favorite deck to play right now, or what do you have one right now?
So I am mostly a limited player. Having played other TCGs for a while, the chase of keeping up with the meta strains me, frankly. Like, I understand that for a lot of people that's part of the fun, like breaking the meta, figuring out where to slip in. But just getting a new deck every week or every other week is just too much for me. I do have a pair of constructed decks, a pair of premier decks that I play, which are some of the most garbage decks you've ever seen. They're my Master and Apprentice dual decks. And the idea is if I have time at an event, I sit down, play against people. If they beat me and are certified judge, I just flip cards until I reveal a promo and I'm like, that one's yours. And so my constraint in building them is I have Fennec Red, because Fennec is the first showcase I opened. And it has all of the heroic promos in there. And so that's 21 cards, some of which are very unplayable. For example, I'm playing 3 copies of Jump to Lightspeed's Ghost, which is not super playable in a Fennec Red shell.
Right.
Now, because I'm playing it, I have also thrown in every Aggression and Cunning Spectre and a bunch of crappy upgrades to give the Ghost keywords. So, like, the one that gives Saboteur, the one that gives Raid, like, I've thrown those in there as one-ofs. Not because they make the deck better, but because it maybe begins to justify the Ghost existing in that deck at all.
Right.
But playing the Ghost for 8, and then being like, here's Infiltrator skill on top of it.
Oh my gosh.
It's real bad. And similarly, my villainy deck is Emperor Palpatine Blue from Spark. And I'm running Count Dooku from Twilight, Maul from Twilight, and Vader from Jump, which are all aggression cards. And oh boy, you haven't lived until you've played Maul for 7 and had it immediately take down. Like, it's just, some of these cards are very, very bad, but I have to play them, and as we get more promos, the decks are going to get worse. Because it's just going to be all high end.
I love it.
It's just going to be all high end, and I'll be like, you know what, this is what we're playing.
That's awesome, though. That's really fun.
They're a
I
ton
love
of
that
fun.
idea.
But yeah, those are my 2 constructed decks that I'm playing right now.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Corey, how about you? Last question.
Yeah. So I assume you talk between all the head judges for all the different events. There's so many events happening each weekend that we put different planetary qualifiers and things. Has there been like one instance of like a rules thing that people are like all buzzing about, like, oh, this happened, like, oh, I can't believe this is so crazy?
Rules, not so much. I mean, on Jump to Lightspeed launch, independent of any event, there was a lot of conversation about how do pilots actually work.
Right. I can imagine.
And
are they
like,
upgrades? Are they units? Like, what is this?
and particularly, when do the attachment restrictions come into play? Because you're only allowed to play a pilot onto a vehicle that doesn't already have a pilot on it, right? But if you use, say, Corvus, which allows you to take a pilot unit and attach it to Corvus, does that bypass restrictions? Or if you use Evidence of the Crime, which lets you take control of an upgrade and attach it to something else, can you take a pilot and attach it to a non-vehicle? Can you attach a second pilot to a vehicle? And the rules at the time were not terribly clear. And so there was a question of, can you take Pilot Luke and just attach him to Yoda and do inverse backpack scene from Empire? There was a day of the judge program talking about meat pilots. Like,
that's nice.
I think we had 1,200 comments in the thread about the Jump to Lightspeed rules updates. most of which were about pilots. I don't think we've had a couple situations where like something goes poorly at an event and the event shows up on Reddit. And something that we have are tournament reports where head judges talk about the events that they ran. And if something went wrong, people are like, hey, this showed up on Reddit. What's your take? And we generally try to avoid putting individuals on blast. And like if a head judge is like, I've made my statement, I'm done, I try to make sure that they don't feel pressured into talking more. But there have been incidents that I'm sure you've heard of
there was one locally.
Yeah, that appear on Reddit or on Twitter. And those definitely take the judge program by storm because they're like, how should we handle this if this happens at our store?
Mm-hmm.
And those are hard. Those are real hard because there isn't a one size fits all answer to those. It's really, what did the people say specifically? How did they behave specifically? What were their physical actions? If you aren't there, you can't make a reasonable judgment. We can give some general advice, like if somebody threatens somebody else, that's a problem, absolutely. But like, what is a threat? Right? Like the next time we play, I'm absolutely going to crush you. That's not a threat, right? What about like, I really don't enjoy playing against you. Is that like where that's not appropriate, but
right, it's bad behavior. It's like being rude, like, but yeah, like where's that line?
Right, or like there's just so much in there of we hear hearsay and it's going to get blown out of proportion, especially on the internet. There's going to be a crusade. How do we handle this and how do we improve the community? And I think those reports have decreased over time as judges become more confident and more comfortable.
Right.
But those are the things, those are the questions and the events that you hear about. Those are the things that we also hear about because it's always just exciting to talk about the latest gossip.
I have one quick follow up on that. Is
absolutely
with the like when you guys talk about instances in that sense, the top 8 specifically, because now it's pressure time, people are focused, locked in. Do you guys like want to make sure judges are like eagle-eyed on each match, like those different matches? And when is it appropriate to jump in and be like, hey, this is an illegal move, you need to roll that back?
Yeah, for sure. So I think that table watching is important. Keeping an eye on matches is important, but the responsibility of the game lies in the hands of the players. I think that the largest portion of our community, not cheaters, like I would like agree, throwing a number on it isn't reasonable.
They're the loudest, but like you hear about it, but yeah.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of times when players make mistakes, it is unintentional and they don't realize it. A lot of people are like, if you're playing at the highest level, you would never make that mistake. And I'm like, buddy, you underestimate our collective stupidity. I don't like, I was keeping track at the very first pre-release I played in, and holy crap, I like made gameplay errors so many times. Just like, if you ever ready your resources before you resource or before you draw, you're breaking the rules. Right? Like, you're not allowed to do that by the rules. It's fine. Don't worry about it. You're not going to get in trouble for readying first. But during top 8, I actually find those to be frequently more relaxed than the final rounds because players are locked in for prize. Now, some players say that's a bad attitude to have because if you're like, my goal is to make top 8, you will lose in the quarterfinals because you're not going to be as dialed in. If your goal is to win the whole thing, you'll remain dialed in the whole time. But I also often find that a lot of times your top 8s are players who know each other, whether they are from like the testing team, they traveled together, or they know the other content creators and like high level players. The folks from like McClunky know the folks from the Bothan network. Like and they have at the very least a professional respect for each other. And the players I find are often more stringent than the judges once we hit top 8.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm like, oh yeah, we can just fix that. And they're like, no, I've made a mistake. I should lose this game. I'm like, we can fix that. You don't have to. We had a game where a player didn't defeat a resource to Han. And I was like, okay, we can just rewind this to the point where you should have defeated the resource. You'll defeat the resource, and then we play on from there. He's like, no. I screwed up. I should lose this game. I concede. And his opponent's like, you didn't have to do that. If you had the waylay, I was dead. And he's like, I did have the waylay. It's like, well, okay, I'll concede game 2. And I'm like, you were playing in the quarterfinals, my friends, and you've conceded games 1 and 2 when you were winning, and the game hadn't been played at all. And so they just played a best of 1 in quarterfinals. And like, if players want to concede, I'm not gonna make them play a game they don't want to play. But I find that players are more particular than judges a lot of the times because there's that sense of righteousness and honor. If they notice themselves making a mistake, they hold themselves to a very high standard. And something that I want to help get out there over time is it's okay to make mistakes. We can fix it. That's what judges are here for. The result very, very rarely should be a player receiving a game loss. Most of the time we can fix it and play on. But for top 8, keep an eye on things. Really anywhere, it's the same level because we want players to have a fun, fair experience in the finals, and we want players to have fun, fair experience in round 7 in the X5 bracket. Like, those people are still playing a game. We want to make sure that they have a good time. As for
That's me.
the last time I played in a competitive TCG event, I went 2-7. One of those my opponent no-showed. One of those I got a bye. That's where I live when playing games. But for stepping in, if you see something go wrong, if you think you see something go wrong as a spectator, just call for a judge, and the players will be like, they'll look at you, and then they'll look at the board, and they'll pause the game 9 times out of 10 and be like, oh yeah, that needs an extra damage. And great. You don't need to interfere or say anything because you might be wrong. You might be pointing out like an optional trigger that a player missed that they've completely forgotten about, and that's something that you're not allowed to do because that would be outside assistance. The judge can come in and be like, hey folks, like they'll talk to you and you'll be like, hey, I think I saw somebody miss a mandatory trigger. You'll go over there, you'll read the card and you'll be like, nope, it says Mega, it's fine. Or yes, they have missed a mandatory trigger. Hey folks, I need you to pause. Did this trigger resolve? And somebody will be like, yeah, it resolved, or no, it didn't, or there was a wolf in play, so I wasn't able to heal, which is why I ignored the trigger and my opponent ignored the trigger. And you as the spectator or you as the judge intervening are like, God, I feel like a moron right now. The number of times I've been like, hey, didn't you miss that thing? And they're like, do you not see the very key card that says we don't do this thing? And I'm like, yeah, all right. But we would much rather you say, hey, I think I saw something go wrong than leave the game state as is. We'd much rather you also just at the match raise your hand and shout judge real loud than walk away from the match, be like, hey, judge, I think I saw something go wrong in a match. It has now been 30 seconds to a minute since I saw it go wrong, so by the time we get back over there, they will be 2 rounds later, and it'll be totally unrecoverable. So if you see something go wrong, just raise your hand, call for a judge, and we can handle things from there.
See something, say something. That's actually that's actually really good advice because I actually see a lot of players just say something on the board, like tell them directly. They don't call for a judge; they just say it. And I always hesitate to do that because like you're not a judge, and your unsolicited advice, like you're potentially changing you're potentially giving new information, whatever that might be. And
you run the risk of committing outside assistance, and you as a player don't want to do that because would you want like it might become strategic advice if you don't know what you're pointing out. And I don't think any player wants to accidentally give strategic. They do want to point out things that are wrong, but it's just safer to call a judge. It protects you and it protects the players.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. That's really good insight. And with that, I don't have any final questions, but I really want to give you a big shout out and I thank you so much for being on the podcast for our episode, this very special episode today. It's been like a month in the making. So, and I know you're a busy guy and you're going to head to Minneapolis this weekend. So, and I'll see you there.
Fantastic.
Definitely. I'm going to try to make the judge meet up too. It depends on when my flights get in, but, again, appreciate it. Corey, Rob, thank you for as always, they're being my co-hosts. Those are amazing questions, and I really appreciate you. And to every listener out there, I hope you found that this conversation was fruitful. If you're not a judge, give it a shot. I'm an apprentice now. I'm going to try to get to a level 1. There's a lot of different benefits to it, not just getting a different appreciation for the game, but there's other benefits in terms of making new friends at large events, or potentially getting promo cards if you're collector aligned. There's a lot of different things. And at the end of the day, it's always good to learn something new. And with that, until next time, may the force be with you. I'll stop the recording.